Welcome back to the deep dive. If you've ever worked with high-level athletes, especially in sports like volleyball, you hit this wall, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
How do you train for that crazy explosive power? We're talking massive jumps, super quick sprints, but also build the kind of cardio fitness they need to recover, like instantly between rallies. Those rallies can be brutal, 5, maybe 9 seconds of all-out effort.
It's a classic conflict, isn't it?
Uh-huh.
Training the muscle for pure power versus tuning the body's aerobic engine.
Exactly. So today we're diving deep. We're trying to cut through some of the noise about which type of high-intensity interval training, HIIT, really nails this. And maybe even more importantly, which type gives you the most consistent results across a whole team.
Right, because averages can hide a lot. We're digging into a study that does a head-to-head comparison.
Right.
Running-based HIIT versus a very specific type of plyometric training interval drop jumping. And the real scientific gold here, I think, isn't just which one makes the average player better, but how it impacts that individual variability. How much do responses differ from one player to the next? How uniform are the games?
Got it. And we're grounding this in solid research. The paper is The Impact of Running-Based and Drop-Jumping Interval Interventions on Cardiorespiratory Fitness and Anaerobic Power of Collegiate Volleyball Players, a comparative analysis of interindividual variability in the adaptive responses.
Bit of a mouthful, that one.
Yeah, quite the title. It's by Xuefeng, Zhao, and Minying, and it was published in the Journal of Sports Science and Medicine just this year, 2024.
So our mission today really is to figure out which training type gives you, the listener, maybe a coach or an athlete yourself, the edge for specific qualities. But also, and this is key, which method is more likely to give you predictable, uniform improvements across the board.
Because you don't want just one or two superstars responding well. You need the whole team lifting, right?
Precisely. Consistency is king in team sports.
Okay, let's set the stage. Volleyball. What are the actual physiological demands? We think power, jumping, hitting. It feels very anaerobic.
It is, in bursts. The study points out those intense bursts are short, like you said, maybe 3 to 9 seconds, accelerations, powerful jumps, quick changes of direction.
But then there's the recovery, only 10 to 20 seconds between those bursts.
And that's where the aerobic fitness becomes critical. Yes, the spike or the block is anaerobic power, but getting ready to do it again, just seconds later with the same intensity, that relies heavily on how good your aerobic system is at, well, recharging things quickly.
So if your cardio is weak, your power fades across a long rally or match.
Absolutely. Your ability to produce that peak power just degrades point after point if you can't recover aerobically. So you really, you have to improve both together. It's not an either.
Which brings us back to HIT. We know it's good for blending those systems, but does the type of HIT running versus jumping make a difference here?
That's the million-dollar question the study tackled. They took 24 male collegiate volleyball players, these guys are experienced, at least 5 years under their belts, and split them randomly into 2 groups of 12.
Okay.
And they put them through a 6-week training block, 3 interval sessions per week, on top of all their regular volleyball practice, drills and tactics.
And the actual interval session structure was the same for both groups, wasn't it? Like the timing.
Yeah, exactly. They kept the work-rest structure identical to make the comparison fair. It was 11 minutes total work time, structured as 15 seconds of intense work, followed by 15 seconds of just passive rest, repeated over and over.
15 on, 15 off? Simple, but intense over 11 minutes.
Very intense. Now let's get into the specifics of what they did during that 15 seconds on, because this is crucial for understanding the results, especially the variability part.
Okay, let's hear it. The running group first.
Right. The interval running group, or IR, their intensity was controlled metabolically. They ran at 120% of the velocity associated with their VO2 max. That's VV2 no max.
Okay, so it's personalized, based on their individual aerobic capacity test results.
Exactly. It's a way to make sure that, relatively speaking, every single player is getting the same physiological stress, even if their actual running speeds are different. It's a very controlled way to set intensity.
Makes sense. Highly controllable, but how do you control the intensity for jumping? It feels more skill-based, maybe.
Good question. For the interval jumping group, or IJ, they used sport-specific plyometrics, drop jumps. But here's the key. They performed repeated drop jumps, but the height they dropped from was specifically chosen for each athlete to elicit their highest possible power output during the jump.
Ah, so they found the optimal drop height for peak power for each guy.
Precisely. And then the frequency was intense. They had to perform 9 drop jumps in that 15-second work interval.
9 drop jumps in 15 seconds. That's a lot. How many does that add up to per session?
It works out to 198 drop jumps per session.
Whoa. Okay, 198 high-power optimized drop jumps 3 times a week for 6 weeks.
Yeah. Like you said, borderline masochistic maybe,
Yeah.
but it definitely ensures they were getting a massive, very specific, explosive plyometric load.
No kidding. Okay, so we have these 2 intense but very different protocols. What happened? Did one clearly work better?
Well, the first big takeaway is that both interventions were really effective. Seriously good results across the board for both groups.
Okay, so it wasn't like one was a dud.
Not at all. Regardless of whether they were in the running group or the jumping group, they showed significant improvements in a whole bunch of key areas.
Like what? What improved for everyone?
Okay, so cardiorespiratory fitness definitely went up. We saw improvements in VO2 max, that VO2 max speed we talked about, and also their ventilatory thresholds, VT1 and VT2.
Which means their aerobic engines got better, basically. More efficient.
Yep. And interestingly, even measures of heart function improved in both groups. Things like maximal cardiac output Q2 max, that's the total blood pump per minute, and maximal stroke volume, SV max, the amount pumped per beat.
I kind of expected the running group to improve cardio stuff, but the jumping group also saw significant gains in VO2 max and cardiac function. That's maybe a little surprising.
It can seem counterintuitive, right? Thinking of jumping as just power. But the sheer volume and intensity of doing nearly 200 drop jumps with only 15 seconds rest, that provides a potent enough stimulus to drive central adaptations too. It really taxes the system.
Okay. And what about the anaerobic power side? Jumps, sprints?
Both groups got better there too. Significant improvements in things like peak and average power output during jump tests, their actual vertical jump height, and even their change of direction speed.
Okay, so the baseline finding is doing either of these intense 15 on, 15 off protocols for 6 weeks works wonders for these volleyball players. Improves cardio, improves power, improves speed.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
You get fitter and more powerful either way.
There have to be differences, right? Otherwise, why do the study? If they both improve everything, where does the specific modality, the running versus jumping, actually matter most?
Exactly. Now we get into comparing the magnitude of the gains between the groups. Where did one group significantly outperform the other?
Let's hear it. Where did the jumpers win?
Predictably, specificity played a big role here. When you looked at the group averages, the interval jumping group showed significantly, and I mean statistically significantly, greater improvements in the classic vertical jump tests, the squat jump, SJ, and the counter movement jump, CMJ.
No surprise there. They trained the jump, they got better at jumping.
Precisely. They practiced jumping explosively almost 600 times a week. They won the jump comparison.
And the flip side, the runners must have won the running tests.
You got it. The interval running group showed a significantly greater improvement in their maximal sprint speed. Specifically, they measured the 20-meter sprint time, and the runners shaved more time off than the jumpers did.
Okay, so that part confirms the basic principle of specificity. If you want the absolute biggest average gain in vertical jump training seems better. If you want the biggest average gain in linear speed, running seems better.
That's the standard takeaway, yeah. Train for what you want to improve most.
But like you said earlier, that's just the average. What about the consistency? This is where the study gets really interesting, right? The variability part.
This, for me, is the real practical insight for anyone coaching a team. It's not just about the average improvement. It's about how predictable that improvement is across your squad.
How did they measure that predictability or uniformity?
They used a statistical approach looking at individual residuals. Basically, it measures how much each individual athlete's response deviates from the group's average response. Low residuals mean everyone responded very similarly. The adaptation was homogeneous, uniform.
Okay.
High residuals mean you had a big spread. Some players responded amazingly well, high responders, while others maybe barely improved or theoretically could even get worse low responders.
Right. And as a coach, you want low residuals. You want everyone getting predictably better.
Ideally, yes. You want a training method that reliably works for the whole team, not just a select few.
So what was the hypothesis here? Did they expect one method to be more uniform than the other?
The thinking was that the interval running protocol, because the intensity was so tightly controlled, using that personalized VV-CHO Emax,
Right, the metabolic control.
that it would likely lead to more homogenized gains, more uniform responses across the board, because the physiological stress was arguably more standardized for each individual.
Okay, logical. Did the data back that up? Did running win the homogeneity battle?
For many key variables, yes, absolutely. The interval running did induce more homogenized adaptations, meaning lower variability, lower residuals, across several important cardiac and aerobic markers.
Which ones specifically?
Things like the first ventilatory threshold, VT1, the maximal cardiac output, Qmax, and the stroke volume, SCmax. The improvements in these fundamental physiological capacities were more consistent, more uniform in the running group.
Interesting. So for building that core aerobic engine and heart function predictably across the team.
Running seems to be the safer bet based on this data. It also showed more homogenized, more uniform improvements in maximal sprint speed.
Okay, that's huge. If I'm a coach and my main goal is ensuring everyone on the team improves their baseline cardio fitness and their top speed reliably, controlled interval running looks like the way to go.
That seems to be the implication. The researchers suggest it's likely because that controllable metabolic load imposes a very similar degree of sort of homeostatic stress on everyone, regardless of maybe skill differences in running.
Yeah.
This leads to a more consistent adaptive signal.
Makes sense. Control the input stress, get more consistent output adaptation. But was it uniform across everything? You mentioned a surprise earlier. Did running win the consistency battle for jumping too?
No, and this is where it gets really nuanced and interesting. For the counter movement jump, the CMJ, the interval jumping protocol, actually resulted in more homogeneous adaptations.
Wait, really? The jumping group had more consistent jump improvements than the running group?
Yes. The uniformity of improvement in CMJ height was significantly better in the group that did all the drop jumps compared to the group that did the running intervals.
Okay, hold on. That's fascinating. So the jump training didn't just give a bigger average jump gain, it also gave a more predictable, more consistent jump gain across the team members for that specific skill.
Exactly. That's what the data showed.
Why would that be? Why was the plyometric training more consistent for improving jumping?
Well, the researchers have a theory. They suggest that performing those 198 drop jumps per session, specifically at the intensity designed to elicit maximal power output for each person,
Right. The optimized drop height.
that ensures a very consistent external explosive load, highly specific to the jumping movement itself. So while the running protocol controlled the internal metabolic stress uniformly, the jumping protocol controlled the external explosive mechanical stress uniformly, at least for that specific motor pattern.
Okay. So that specific consistent mechanical demand on the jump mechanism itself is what drove the more uniform adaptation in jumping ability.
That's the line of reasoning, yeah.
Yeah.
It facilitates highly uniform adaptations, specifically in the neuromuscular system's ability to perform that explosive jump.
Wow. Okay, so this really adds layers to the idea of specificity, doesn't it? It's not just about the average game, but the consistency of the game, too.
Absolutely.
So let's try and synthesize this. What's the big takeaway for you, the listener, the coach, the athlete? We started with this paradox of power versus endurance.
And we end with a much more tailored picture. It really drives home that the best training is highly dependent on your specific goals, not just for the average outcome, but for the predictability of that outcome across your team.
So if your main priority is getting uniform improvements in, say, cardiac function, the team's recovery ability, and maybe their linear speed.
Then based on this study, controlled interval running seems like the more reliable choice for getting consistent homogenized results across the group.
But if your absolute top priority, the non-negotiable thing you need everyone to improve on, is explosive jumping ability, specifically that counter-movement jump.
Then the interval drop jumping, despite maybe being more mechanically stressful overall, appears superior not just for the size of the average gain, but critically for the consistency and predictability of that gain across the team.
So you have to tailor your HIIT modality based on which specific quality you most need to improve uniformly. That's a really practical insight.
It really is. It moves beyond just group averages.
Now, we should mention limitations, right? This was a specific group.
Definitely. Important caveats. These findings are from male collegiate volleyball players. That's a specific population.
Which raises a really interesting question to think about, doesn't it? How might these patterns of homogeneity, the consistency of results, look different if they repeated this study with, say, female collegiate players? We know there can be gender-specific differences in biomechanics, injury risk with plyos, physiological responses.
That's a crucial point and a great question for future research. You can't automatically assume these homogeneity results would be identical.
And also, the specific protocol matters, right? This was 15 seconds on, 15 seconds off at these specific intensities.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Change the work-to-rest ratio.
Yeah.
Change the intensity, maybe run at 110% VV202 max instead of 120%. Or use a different drop jump frequency, and you might get different results, both for the average gains and for the variability. So context is everything.
Always is in sports science.
Indeed. So if you really want to get into the weeds, understand exactly how they determined that optimal drop height or calculated those individual residuals for variability.
You'd read the paper.
You really should. We strongly encourage you to check out the full article by Zhao and Liu in the Journal of Sports Science and Medicine.
Absolutely. Well, this has been incredibly insightful. Thanks for breaking that down.
My pleasure. Fascinating study.
And thanks to you for joining us for this deep dive. If you found this useful, make sure to follow the channel, turn on those notifications so you don't miss our next breakdown of complex research like this.